We are now talking to Dean of Knicks Film School, Jonathan Macri. What's going on, John?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
We are good, man, and we have a lot of Knick haters that listen to this show, but it's okay. With the New York Knicks, you just wonder if you hate them or you love them. I am a Knicks fan. I could sit here today and say, you know what? Maybe we could say Mazel Tov if they actually land the player they've been really gunning for since the beginning of the offseason in Donovan Mitchell. But the questions are still leaning towards, are they going to do the right thing, not only for the fans, but for the organization? So before we get into that, how are you? How is your family doing since COVID?
Oh, we're good. Yeah. My wife and girls got it a few weeks ago, but nothing crazy. All things considered, what are we, 2.5 years into this mess? I'd say we're making out fine. Thanks for asking.
It is a mess, by the way. Speedy's grandfather just got it.
Yeah,
again, so
he got it last week. So he's on his last, 2 or 3 days of quarantine now for that. So.
It's as long as he stays 6 feet away from me, because I don't want it again. I had
Almost.
it bad. Yeah, but anyways, let's get into this Donovan Mitchell saga because it's been a saga for the New York Knicks. We all know Allen Houston and Julius Randle and Worldwide Wes went to that Dallas and Utah game, and everybody was talking about it, how the Knicks shouldn't have done that. They should not be breaking New York NBA rules and all that crap. Jalen Brunson signs with the Knicks, takes the lesser contract, and decided not to stay with Dallas. And now all of a sudden, Donovan Mitchell becomes the Knicks become the lead team to get Donovan Mitchell. Not surprising. What's going on with this? Is this going to ever end? Are the Knicks the lead team to get him now? Or is it going to be the Hawks? Or is it going to be, I don't know, the Wizards or the Raptors that we're hearing now? This is going crazy, and I'm getting crazy. I don't know. I can't even express myself anymore with this. It's getting me so out of shape with this.
Well, I think if you listen to most Knicks fans, they would tell you that Danny Ainge is the one getting a little crazy because I think like a lot of people, he probably, or I don't know if he expected this, but there were many people who were predicting that once Donovan Mitchell went on the table and he started taking offers, he was going to be able to basically clean New York out of all of its assets in a Mitchell trade because, getting to really the question that you asked, like, why do the Knicks want Donovan Mitchell? Because they need a star. They need a star player. They need someone who could create offense out of nothing. They don't have that guy, at least not someone who could do it efficiently. I think Jalen Brunson will help a lot. Jalen Brunson's a really good player. Offensively, he's not Donovan Mitchell. And, Mitchell's 25. He's got 3 years left on his deal. He wants to play in New York. He checks a lot of boxes for them. I mean, it's not a perfect fit, which, maybe we can get into, but I think for all those reasons, if I had to guess, I would guess that Ainge thought he'd be able to extract a hefty sum from Leon Rose. And maybe he still will. We don't know. I mean, the deal's obviously not done yet. Maybe it'll never get done. Who knows? But from my read of the situation, the fact that this is now, over 2 weeks, and we keep hearing, leaked reports of, the deal is done. The deal is done. Well, the deal is done when it's going to be done. Clearly, the two sides are not in agreement on everything, which I if you're a hopeful Knicks fan, I think it means that, maybe Leon's holding firm on a few things.
So 4 players that have been noted in the deal. We've heard combinations of every one of them. Mitchell Robinson, Obi Toppin, Quentin Grimes, and Immanuel Quickley. So what do you think is the most fair for both sides? And what would be your preference among those 4 players, the combination of the two they would have to deal?
Well, Mitchell Robinson's not going to be dealt because he's not allowed to be traded until December 15th.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because he just signed a new contract. There were some reports that Utah had initially asked for him and RJ Barrett. I'm assuming that was before free agency and before Mitch agreed to a new contract. So, but of the other 3 that you mentioned, Obi, Quickley, and Grimes, I think that's the most interesting conversation going on right now because I think there's arguments in favor of why the Knicks should hold on to each one of them at all costs. And I think there's arguments for why perhaps the Knicks, one of them should be the player that goes out in the deal. I mean, ultimately there's 2 sides to this and it's going to depend on what Utah wants. It seems as if the Jazz want Quentin Grimes for a couple of reasons. One, I think he's the easiest fit, not only on Utah, but on any team in the league. I mean, he's a 3-and-D guy who could do some other stuff on the offensive end. And he has an extra year in his contract, unlike Obi Toppin and Immanuel Quickley, who will both be eligible for extensions next summer. So you got to pay those guys sooner. I don't know if Utah necessarily has any interest in handing out any big contracts anytime soon. If I'm the Knicks, I mean, it's tough to have this conversation and not talk about the picks, because it's like, well, if you give an extra young player, do you get to hold on to one of your own unprotected future picks? And it sounds like, from what I could read into the situation at least, the Knicks are trying to retain not only the ability to field a good team next year and in the immediate future, but also to make another big trade down the line for the next star that gets antsy and wants out. And that's a really, tough tightrope to walk. I have a feeling Grimes is going out, which I've accepted it. I think he's gonna be a really nice player. I think Quickley is going to stay. I'd be very surprised if Quickley went out in the deal. I think they like Quickley a lot. I think they feel like Quickley's part of the foundation. To me, it comes down to Obi, because Obi's a really interesting player. We still don't really know what he is, because he's never gotten a chance to show it with like extended minutes, because he plays behind Julius Randle, unfortunately. And then that's the other part of this is like, can they figure out a way to get a third or a fourth team into this deal and maybe send Randle someplace? Which, if you do that, then I think it becomes even more imperative to hold on to Toppin.
As everybody knows, we are talking to Dean of Knicks Film School, Jonathan Macri. John, I know a lot of guys are making jokes right now on our panel over here, laughing, saying, because I heard over the last couple of weeks that Donovan Mitchell and Immanuel Quickley went out to dinner quite a few times, and they were spotted eating dinner together. Now, I don't know if that means anything, but it's hard to believe that these guys have a good relationship. He's a young player. He's been in the league for, 2 years, 2.5 years. And Donovan Mitchell, he's one of the young stars in this league. He's in Utah. Yes, he's a New Yorker. He lives out here in the summertime. But how much does he know Immanuel Quickley? But I think there is some kind of thought to this, that there was some kind of story behind it. And that's why it was posted up in the Post and some of the different things that I've read. Do you think that had anything to do or has anything to do with Donovan Mitchell going to the Knicks?
No. I think a lot of players are friends in the league. Immanuel Quickley is a young player trying to establish his name and his brand in the NBA, and that's why you saw him out at, was it the White Party or something, or whatever that.
They were hanging out. Him and Obi Toppin was there too.
Yeah. So I mean, good for IQ. I guess, pun intended, it'll improve his Q rating. Donovan Mitchell, though, I mean, I think he wants to come to New York because I think he probably, I don't know, I would imagine he thinks he could probably win in New York. I imagine he probably doesn't love Utah. Obviously, his dad works for the Mets, and he tweets about the Mets every day, so that's a big deal to him. I think more than anything, though, Donovan Mitchell, if you paid attention to him since he got drafted, he is, I don't know, calling him image conscious kind of sounds bad, but I think he cares about being one of the more marketable young players in the NBA. And I think he's done a really nice job of that, or as good a job as you can do being a member of the Utah Jazz. But I think he's ready to take a step up in that department. And I think for him, and we've heard reports for years now that people in his camp want him in one of the coastal cities, whether it's New York or Miami, or I suppose LA, but neither of those teams are in a position to make such a trade. So I think that's what it's about for Donovan Mitchell, more than it is about, any friendship with Immanuel Quickley.
So the signing that already happened was Jalen Brunson, 4 years, $104 million. What did you think of that contract, and what do you think of his fit going forward with the Knicks?
I don't have an issue with the contract. I mean, he is next year, I think, going to be like the 50th or 51st highest paid player in the league. I think he's probably about a top 50 player, whereabouts. I put a lot of stock in his numbers without Luka, not only last year, but the last few years. I mean, he is the number I always go back to with Brunson that stands out the most is amongst guards who, played the requisite amount of minutes to qualify for different, various leaderboards. He was the most efficient guard in the entire league from 2-point range. There was literally no other guard more efficient than him. I think it was him and then Jrue Holiday were the only two guards who managed to shoot above 50% on 2-pointers. That's really freaking hard to do. He is a maestro inside the arc. Now, he's not a perfect guard, which is why you could get him for 25 and not have to pay him a max deal, because he's not I mean, he could shoot the three, but he's not someone that's going to give you a lot of perimeter gravity. He even, the biggest thing that I hope changes in the coming years, I hope he gets a little bit more comfortable taking spot ups, because that'll make his role as an off-ball player a little bit easier. But the Knicks need someone who could generate efficient offense. They haven't had an efficient offense in God knows how long. And at the end of the day, not that Tom Thibodeau is the most creative offensive mind, he's someone that leads into the strengths of his players on offense. 2 years ago, he did a great job of it with Julius Randle. Last season, no one was particularly good, and the offense stunk. So I think if you give Tibbs a guy who has legitimate strengths on offense, the nice thing about Tom is he'll figure out a way to use that player effectively. Again, I don't have an issue with the contract. As far as the fit, I think the fit, if you're projecting it with Donovan Mitchell, yeah, it's a little small, but Mitchell just needs to try on defense. If he tries on defense, I think he's going to be fine. And Jalen Brunson, that's one issue that you're never going to have with him. He always gives maximum effort. He's going to be limited because of his height, but that's a first world problem. And Knicks fans, we don't have many of those. So.
John, there are stories coming out that the Knicks they've reached out to the Chicago Bulls. They offered Julius Randle and Nicole Vucevic, whatever it is. Vucevic, I'm sorry. Vucevic is a name that the Knicks are very interested in, and I don't know what it means. Does that stop them from possibly making a move for Donovan Mitchell? Maybe they get both of them. Is there some kind of is this a true story? Is this actually going to happen, or it's just a rumor?
I haven't heard it. So
really,
I mean,
it's been all over Twitter today that the Knicks reached out to the Bulls, and actually the Bulls are interested in possibly trading Vucevic. I always mess up his name, by the way. I hate that name.
The Vooch trade, I'll say, was
Vucevic. There it is, Vucevic.
I just call Vooch. It's easier that way.
Vooch, that's a better. I like that, Vooch.
It was a crappy trade the minute they made it, and it was made to look worse when they went out and got DeMar DeRozan, who's not exactly known for his defense. And, Vooch is he's not the shooter that people perceive him to be. Again, I haven't seen that rumor. I certainly
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
I'll take your word for it that it's out there. I would imagine that the Bulls are just looking to see what they can get for Vooch. Mm-hmm. And I think it's known around the league that if you want Julius Randle, you can have Julius Randle.
Right.
The biggest question for me, and what I've been wondering since the beginning of the offseason, and really since probably the trade deadline, is do the Knicks just want to get out from under Julius Randle, or are they, because obviously he has 4 years left on this extension, last year being a player option, or are they going to insist on extracting some value? Now, the Knicks obviously don't need Nikola Vucevic. He is not a player that I would imagine Tom Thibodeau would be thrilled to take on. And, like we just said, they just signed Mitchell Robinson. They are not paying Mitchell Robinson $17 million next year to be a backup, especially when they just paid Isaiah Hartenstein $8 million to come in and back up.
Well, maybe you move Mitchell Robinson to the 4. I mean, obviously, they could do that.
They could not do that. That would be very foolish.
Why? Why would it be foolish?
Mitchell Robinson at the
He's
4?
athletic. He's very athletic. He could defend multiple positions. I mean, the Knicks haven't gotten points at that position. Besides Julius Randle before that, Carmelo Anthony was the last guy that gave him points at that position. The Knicks have never really – they've always been, over the years, they've gotten it from their big man, Patrick Ewing. And after Patrick Ewing left, they got it from the perimeter. They got it from Allen Houston. They got it from that.